Okay, welcome everyone. Thank you for your time today in attending our first town hall. We'll be talking about the coronavirus and COVID-19 trends, resources, and insights into the kinds of challenges our clients are facing. My name is Bobby Larson, and I serve Holmes Murphy as the education consultant. I'll be your moderator. Before we begin, I'd like to go over a few logistics regarding the audio features of today's program. The only people you'll be able to hear during the webinar are the presenters and me. When the opportunity for questions is introduced, you can unmute yourself by pressing *6. Please mute yourself again after posing your question by again pressing *6. Alternately, you could send me an email at blarson@holmesmurphy.com. B is in boy, Larsen @holmesmurphy.com. I'll be monitoring for questions throughout the town hall, and I can verbally ask them on your behalf. Please let us know, though, either verbally or in your email, who you are, what organization you represent, and what role you play in that organization. Please note this webinar is being recorded to allow those who are not able to join us today to gain access to the material. Joining me today are my colleagues at Holmes Murphy, Rich Youngman, our practice leader, Mick McGill, Vice President Client Service, Rob Mraz, Associate Vice President for Claims, and Lori Hart, our Director of Educational Initiatives. And I'm going to turn things over to Lori.
Hey, everyone. I want to thank Bobby. It's like herding cats sometimes as we're trying to navigate all this. So she's done a great job. And admittedly, 10 days ago when we started talking about doing this weekly call, she point blank said, hey, do you want to do the Skype format so they can see the PowerPoint or just talk? I'm like, oh, we'll just need to talk. Everything I say today is going to have a PowerPoint that follows. So to that same email, Bobby's email, blarson@holmesmurphy. If you want a copy of what we are saying, and it's a bunch of copy paste, feel free to let us know, and we're happy to share that with you. I sometimes use PowerPoints as a way to think through things, and that's how this was built today. So I'm going to talk to you a lot and know that there's PowerPoint to supplement that. So during these town halls, we'll always come back to the beginning of what we talked about last week if you happen to be on the call. In the world of Holmes Murphy, as we think through risk and choices and decisions, we will always use the model of avoid, reduce, and transfer. And so as you are in the next phase of COVID-19, maybe your facilities are empty, maybe they're not empty, maybe questions have come up this week, we're still going to be taking situations and helping you think through how do we avoid this, how do we reduce this, or how do we transfer this risk somewhere else. The resources we're going to continually pull you back to is also the Center for Disease Control, although a pop just came up that now Pence is blaming the CDC, so I don't know what's about to happen today. But we still believe that any information that you do push out should come from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, cdc.gov. And if you go to the White House information, they still pull you back to CDC. So we are supportive of you pushing out information, but information you push out to your members should always be correct information and cite the experts. Also, we want to make note of, as we update our coronavirus resources, and those will continually be updated based on client needs, those are going to sit on our holmesmurphy.com Fraternal website. So if you just Google in Holmes Murphy resources, Holmes Murphy Fraternal, the resources pop up, and it is at the very top. And any questions about resources or any questions about, I think I need a resource for, Bobby Larson is monitoring that and working on that and turning us, the cats, on that. So please know that that information is up there. Throughout these town halls, and we're going to adjust them based on y'all's needs and based on what you're telling us, we're going to do a couple of things every week. Number one, I'm going to kind of walk you through the trends that I've seen for the week. Number two, I'm going to walk you through what I believe to be good resources, and then I'm going to flip it to our insurance experts to talk about the insurance components of this and the questions that they're having. As Bobby said before, please, if you have a question, you can unmute, identify who you are, organization, question, and then also feel free to email her and she'll hop in as needed. So the first trend that we are seeing, if you're following the headlines, I think that applies to us. We've seen some headlines this week about our friends, the college students who went on spring break and they're coming back and they're testing positive. 28 UT students tested positive for coronavirus. I saw something University of Tampa. So as a week ago or 2 weeks ago, the students were getting blasted for being on spring break. Now they're being blasted because they're testing positive for this. We're also seeing enforcement pick up. At this point, we have seen a lot of governors take over enforcement. We've seen mayors take over enforcement. But before that, these kind of sat as guidelines. And in the world of fraternity and sorority, guidelines are good ideas. CDC has guidelines, but now we're seeing some enforcement. And through that enforcement, we saw the Tampa Bay pastor who was arrested for holding church services. I saw an interview, I think it was with the sheriff, who had tried to partner, tried to work and say, don't do it. They did it. And so he was arrested. I think you will start to see enforcement continue as state people are called up, military people, National Guards. I think we're going to see enforcement kind of be the trend. And that is important because if you know that you have students still operating in fraternity facilities, which they are allowed to do, we need to understand that enforcement's kind of the next place of this. One of the headlines this week was from SIU Carbondale Delta Chi fraternity was suspended after violating the COVID-19 directive. Directive's not policy, but there's something in place there that allowed the university to act. And so I think if you have space to think about these things, my thought is we're going to start to see enforcement happen in the next week or two as we are entering into the worst pieces of this. And so increased communication is useful. Alpha Z Delta, one of our clients, last week after the call, worked with their staff, and they had, the murmur that they were hearing was a lot of seniors were still trying to get together to have that senior event, I use hand quotes, formal, and that led to the national organization under the executive director to declare a cease and desist. I don't know if they listen to everything we say, but anytime we are reinforcing what states are saying, what governors are saying, I think it's important. So Alpha Z Delta served a notification to all the members, alumni and undergraduate, for cease and desist for all in-person activities for chapters and alumni associations as a result of the murmur and the trends that we are seeing. One of the trends that I'm seeing is I'm just watching how groups respond to this. Phi Sigma Sigma, who is not a client, but I think they have done a really good job on their virtual member experience. If you're looking for examples, if you just go to onephisigmasigma.org, and the program is called Detour, which is just a catchy name. They have put this into just guided virtual member experience for new members, seniors, and alumni members. And it's all on their website. I think Harriet and that team have done a great job. They have fraternity weekly meetings where they're putting people into groups and hosting virtually. And they also have opportunities for people to engage with fitness, study hours, book clubs, things like that. Have seen another national fraternity. They're going live, SAE and James Irwin under his leadership. He's going live every week and just doing fraternity, or every night, I don't know, doing fraternity like a game show almost kind of thing. Trivia, that's the word. So we're starting to see groups kind of use this as a time to keep the engagement going.
Hey, Lori.
If you haven't,
Can I interrupt? We have a very timely question here from Brooke Kinsley Isbell from Pi Kappa Phi, Assistant Executive Director of Prevention and Accountability. She would like to know what kind of software people are using for online programming. Their current platform only allows for 100 people, and they're concerned that more people would want to join. I would like the answer to that question too. So if you have great resources in that area, if you could shoot me an email and let me know what platform you're using and why you like it, we'll compile a list and post it to our website, because I know there are other organizations struggling with that as well. Lori, do you have anything to shed light on Brooke's question?
Yeah, I think our Zoom platform only allows for 100. If that's, I think, what is the platform. In Pi Kappa, I could be totally wrong, but I've heard that 100 number. Brooke, a couple of resources. I think Facebook Live, the stuff that I'm seeing just coming from churches, is innovative, and it's working for churches on Sundays. And if you're looking for innovation, whether you go to church or religious or not, I think it's interesting right now to watch the churches and what they're doing, and the diocese, and how they're doing church in different platforms. Some are recording, some are doing it live, some are on YouTube doing it. So that's a good nod just to look somewhere else and go, how are they doing that? And what's working and what's not working. I would also say, I don't know if my friend Ryan Lugabell's on here, but Ryan's done some research around platforms as well. But also to that point, Bobby, if anybody has things that are working correctly, just shoot her an email and we can compile that, and even put that on our resource page as platforms. And then Harriet Brooke, I would reach out to Harriet at Phi Sigma Sigma and look at their website. I just think she's done I think it's a collective effort, but I can see Harriet's space all over this, so I would reach out to her as well. And then the two resources I kind of wanted to highlight this week, the Chronicle of Higher Education. Last week they started a 4-week webinar series. The cool part with resources right now is, I don't know how you all feel. I feel like we're there's too many resources. There's so many resources right now. But I think a couple of cool things that I'm looking at is every week, if you go to TED, TED.com, TED's doing a live TED Talk every day at noon, Monday through Friday, with experts. And they're doing some really good experts. So today's topic was why sleep is important. Those things are up on their website. So even if you're using those to send out to members, it's just a kind of a 20-minute conversation every day on this work with a lot of important think tank type of people. So I would look at TED. I think also the Chronicle of Higher Education, they just started a 4-week webinar last week. Their next one is tomorrow, or April 8th, maybe, April 8th at 2 o'clock. But if you go to the Chronicle of Higher Education, their next webinar is called What a College Should Not Do During a Recession. I could probably insert the word what a national fraternity, national sorority should not do during a recession, and we might have some good insights from the Chronicle of Higher Education. So I would register for that webinar series as well. I think that's important. And the NIC, under Judd Horace's leadership, he announced a think tank this week that's going to go on for a 15-month period. But as a part of that, they're doing some listening sessions with experts. And the days just are blur. A few days ago, 2 days ago maybe, Dr. Jody Guest, who is from the Rollins School of Public Health, she's an epidemiologist, insanely smart. She did a think tank session with the NIC. I say she's smart because she's a personal good friend of mine, and I knew she would be able to translate it. So if you go to the NIC fraternity.org / public-health-discussion, or just go to nicfraternity.org, you'll see their think tank series. Jody does, it's 30 minutes of a lot of practical tips to think through what fall might look like. And I think she brought some clarity to it, because she said you're going to have to worry about your normal stuff in the fall, which almost gives us hope. It's like, okay, we can go back to worrying about hazing, sexual misconduct, alcohol, and how we treat people. In addition to, now we're going to worry about this. But she also gave some good practical advice for those of you who are debating summer conferences and do we cancel, do we not cancel. She has an opinion on that. Her opinion is simply that, an opinion. But I think bringing in an epidemiologist to your discussion as you think through June and July and or August conferences, which what you'll kind of hear from her is June to August are two different things in this discussion. So I encourage you to listen to Jody Guest. And then tomorrow, I believe the NIC is doing a next round of public health or think tank. And they're actually, my husband, who does this for a living, decontamination, he's going to be on there talking about decontamination in facilities, and they're thinking through food and housing and spaces like that. So kudos to the NIC, I think, and their work that they are doing. And to that point, if there's something they're not doing, we are happy if you just want to shoot me an email, anybody, and say, what I'd like to hear is blah, 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 blah. We're happy to add that component into the town hall as well. So now I'm going to turn it over to Rich and Mick and Rob and talk about insurance and premiums and hospitals and cleaning and all that good stuff. So You got to
Hey,
take it.
everybody. Rich Youngman. And again, thank you for attending today. And most importantly, thank you for the leadership that you're providing to the industry through this. It certainly is unprecedented place that we find ourselves. A lot of questions that really, right at this point in time, not a lot of people have clear answers for, especially around business operations. But, with the state focused, I know, like Lori had indicated, Judd and the NIC and the other associations are really trying to bring people together to work through this. So I'm glad whatever we can supplement to help is certainly what we're trying to do. For me, and I think Rob's got a really good, important topic that he's seen a lot of inquiries on that we'll have him address for. But what we're hearing mostly now is really around the insurance side of this and what does that mean in terms of cost? Is this going to be recognized? And the answer that I can give you is that it definitely is being recognized. We are looking for solutions in regards to how do we address these issues around uncertainty, especially for those organizations that have summer renewals earlier in the fall renewals where we really don't have a lot of clarity around membership. We're looking for those solutions that are immediate for those groups, and our carriers have demonstrated that they're willing to work with us there. From a property insurance standpoint, we will not see any type of premium relief on that side. Certainly, the risk of loss to the facilities is going to continue to exist. I mean, there's tornadoes and hailstorms and windstorms and hurricanes that are not going to pause because of the virus. One of our bigger concerns is if this does trickle into the fall and these facilities remain vacant, you could actually make the argument that the risk has increased because we just don't have people overseeing these facilities around these facilities on a day-to-day basis. But we're working with the carriers on a daily basis, having those discussions, and definitely they are working with us. Another question that we're hearing a lot of, what if they don't come back for the fall? And I think most people are staying optimistic that we're gonna have students back on campus in the fall, and we're gonna have college football. But it is something as this thing develops that we got to kind of watch. I think other countries that may have gotten over their curve is going to probably be a strong indicator of how long we'll be kind of in this lockdown status and doing things virtually versus in person. But if the worst case scenario comes about, certainly some response. What I would encourage executives and those that work in the area of risk management, when we talk about decreased numbers, but if we still have the same size same size of chapter count, we really need to have some convincing story to tell the underwriters why that is a significantly different risk than what it was when it's a 100-man chapter. Certainly they're doing same functions, they're recruiting, and if we say anything, they're kind of doing it with an added twist around COVID-19. So we need to be able to have those discussions in regards to how we're going to manage risk through this. And Lori had indicated, while we're focusing on this, the ills that we face and have to combat on a daily basis throughout the year remain. This just adds another level of challenge to that. And certainly I think if this does protract to where we have students back on campus in the fall, it's going to be an enforcement issue around what does that look like. Obviously, the hygiene of the facilities will be a concern, as well, the parents when they're, choosing where they want their student to live. So we are working hard in regards to make sure that we have great resources to help you partner with your local house corporations to work through these issues, to give them some guidance. I mean, certainly, they are looking for this and they need it. And for all likely purposes, it's going to be a different environment that they have ever operated in. So just want to let you know that, those are the issues that we're dealing with and we're staying focused on, and, trying to provide creative solutions and for our clients. Rob, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Rich. This is Rob Mraz. Again, thank you for joining us today. I work in client advocacy along with claims, and part of that is reviewing contracts for our clients. So we get a number of contracts weekly. This whole COVID-19 has put a lot of uncertainty and financial distress on a lot of empty properties. So the house corporations are certainly looking for opportunities to create revenue during these down periods. And one thing that has come up on several occasions in the last week and a half since our last town hall is some of these locations are being contacted by hospitals wanting to lease the facility to house professional medical staff and employees so that they're not having to travel as far, they're close in proximity, and help better service patients. So that has created an opportunity for revenue, especially for a property that's empty and is no longer able to collect rent. Under this, I have not seen an actual agreement yet. The questions have just been posed. So if you receive an agreement, we would really like to see what that looks like. I estimate they're going to look very different from hospital to hospital. But if you have that opportunity, it would be helpful for us to look at that to see what kind of provisions are generally included in there. But some things to think about when you start to explore that as an option, if it presents itself to you, is number one, your liability and property coverage. The number one question is, am I still covered? Well, to answer that question, first you should probably talk to somebody at your national headquarters. And the reason being is that they sponsor that insurance program for you, and your recognition as in good standing is dependent upon having coverage. So I think that's a conversation you really need to have with your national headquarters. I haven't heard of anybody saying no, absolutely not. But that's a conversation they should probably be looped into. Two, really the liability and property coverage comes down to, is there a change in your exposure? So assuming you have the green light and everybody's okay with that, the question there is, has your operation changed? A house corporation really acts as a landlord for students. And so if you're just acting as a landlord for the hospital's employees, that's probably not going to change your exposure, okay? So as long as you're operating normally as a landlord and conducting business as you normally would, I don't foresee a coverage issue if there was a premise liability claim or something occurred at the property for which you would normally be liable for. It would still defend you, that type of thing. Property coverage, so long as the hospital's not asking to store hazardous materials, turn it into a lab, start treating patients there, again, I wouldn't foresee a fire loss or wind, hail, or flood or water loss, anything like that become a coverage issue for you. It's really just has to do with the nature of the property and if that exposure changed. So if you're a housing facility and you're housing tenants, I don't foresee a claims issue there. The next piece that you really want to start looking at, and we're going to put a resource together to try to help with this because this question is coming up a lot. This will help guide you through that process, but really is looking at some key pieces in the lease agreement. Number one is I think you really need a good hold harmless and indemnification agreement. And the purpose of that is through this process, you don't want to take on any new liability or greater exposure than you normally would have. So if they want to house employees there, you want to make sure that you're not taking on liability of those employees or the hospital in that process. Whoever's writing the lease, whether they're presenting one from their side or you are presenting your own, or it's a joint effort in developing something, it's whoever's the drafting is probably going to have the opportunity to make it the most beneficial or favorable to them. So the more you can participate in that, the more opportunity you're going to have to make sure that you're protected. You would definitely always want to be make sure they have adequate insurance limits and that you're asking to be an additional insured on that. The key with the indemnification is you just don't want to end up defending them for claims arising out of their negligence. Okay, the most equitable is if it's silent, that's better than having one that's favorable for them. If it can be mutual in nature, that's even better. But those are the key things. And I don't foresee that they'll change tremendously from what you might have today. However, again, we haven't seen an actual contract yet on this type of use, so it will be helpful if you have one to forward that to us. Another thing that might come up in that is subrogation. A lot of times, you'll see a carrier or the lessor or lessee wanting to waive that subrogation. If you can get their carriers to, or get it to a point where they're waiving subrogation against you, that's excellent. At the very least, though, I would recommend that you try not to waive your rights of subrogation, simply because, while these medical professionals probably aren't the type that are going to violate your rules, they still are human and could very well create a fire or, discharge a sprinkler accidentally or do something else that causes damage to the property. And hopefully they're covered and you have you have insurance proceeds to recover, but you don't want to increase payouts under your own property that can be offset by recovering that money from the tortfeasor or wrongdoer. If push comes to shove and it's not a deal breaker, it's really not a deal breaker to waive that subrogation necessarily, because your policies will allow for that, the way the contractual liability that's written in there. We just recommend not giving it if you have that option. The other pieces that we've kind of been looking at and recommending to clients with these questions are that they don't try to keep the similar rules in place, like no candle burning, no smoking, no heaters, hot plates, etc., things that increase risk of fire. Some of your chapter rules may not apply to a medical professional, which I understand, but again, they are individuals. It might be helpful. It may not be contractual, but it may be helpful to understand what the hospital or university hospital or med center is requiring of their employees while they're staying there. And then lastly, with the risk of this COVID-19 exposure to medical providers and their employees, I've been recommending that it's probably crucial to understand, if the hospital is going to be offering some sort of cleaning or disinfecting at any point that someone is diagnosed with it and has been in the facility, or even at the end or at the end of the lease agreement. The virus doesn't live very long, so if they're only going to use it for a few months and then students aren't going to be back for another month, you're probably okay based on what we're hearing about the longevity or life cycle of this virus. However, a month later, someone comes in, you have your members return, and somebody gets sick. They may try to present a liability claim if they knew that you had somebody that was potentially in there that had been infected. They may say, no, I caught it from living here. They're going to make a claim against you. And so this is kind of a preemptive, I don't know to what degree. I mean, that's outside of my expertise. The property needs to be disinfected and cleaned. Obviously, Lori's said that Clint will be speaking about that at another webinar. But if that is a concern for you, which we believe it could be, it's something just to address with the hospital, because they have cleaning and disinfecting going on all the time. They're going to be they probably have their own experts that could do it for you and at their cost. So those are the main trends I've seen in this type of questions for these contracts. And again, if you receive one or are looking into it, it would be very helpful if you wouldn't mind forwarding that to us so that we could review it and help you look through it and see if there are any issues where your insurance could be problematic with respect to your insurance. Any other lease, though, we would always recommend, any other provisions, we would recommend you talk to local legal counsel just to make sure they've looked at all legal implications.
And as everything has a like a big certification arm or a big like AFA has NASPA, NASPA has this. In the world of decontamination, I only know this because of my husband. A good website to keep on site is the Global Biorisk Advisory Council, gbac.org. Patty Olinger is probably who you would call. If the phone rang, it'd probably be Patty. But they're kind of the people, if you have issues, problems, like we can help you navigate like how to clean the facility. But that would be the place I would just kind of put on my radar and look at because they have a lot of good stuff on their website. Bobby, do we have any questions?
We do not on the email, although I do have to thank Andrea Kleekamp. She sent a great link to a Facebook group that focuses on virtual programming and conversations and things. We'll share that. But if anyone has any questions, now's the time. Either unmute and ask it after identifying yourself or shoot me an email.
If there's no questions, also, is there anybody, and you can email if it's easier, but if there's something that's not out there that's missed that you're like, I wish Holmes Murphy would, feel free to also unmute and kind of help you. Okay. I'm going to let Bobby close and just tell you kind of what's on deck, what we're thinking about for next week. And if at any point during the week you all have suggestions, inputs, or just questions, we're going to be back every week with just kind of this check-in of stuff that we're hearing. But next week, I'm going to let Bobby tell you date, time, and kind of where we're going to focus next week.
Yeah, we'll be doing this at the same time next week, Wednesday, April 8th, 12 o'clock Central Time, 1 o'clock Eastern Time. Next week's conversation will include questions and issues for local House Corporation volunteers. So I'll be sending out the invitations to all our local contacts, but I'd also ask staff on the call to share that information about the town hall with your local people in case they're not on my list. That would be really helpful. This space is created for you to ask questions and think through problems and share resources and successes. And if you have specific topics to suggest or questions to pose in advance, please do reach out to me at blarson@holmesmurphy.com. Oh, wait, I have an email. Let's see. Oh, this is Danny just thanking us. Danny Miller from Alpha Sigma Phi. You're welcome. Let me get back to Andrea's email and... Okay, this is what Andrea says. This is a Facebook group that has popped up as programming on campuses has transitioned online. It has a wealth of resources and conversations happening about how to do this. As folks are looking to do things, this might be a good space for people to join. And it is, it's a Facebook group. If you've got a pencil, the number is 499-354-504-091-393. /members/. We'll send that link out. Thank you, Andrea, for sharing that, and thanks, Danny, for asking. Other questions as we're wrapping up?
And Andrea, if you don't mind popping that in the fraternity sorority prevention folks, because Brooke's in there and probably other people that are on this call, that'd be helpful too.
All right, seeing and hearing no questions, I'm going to say this is all that we have time for today. Thank you for sharing your time with us. This town hall will be posted to our website, the recording of it, as well as the slides. So please continue to check out our resources at holmesmurphyfraternal.com. And please reach out if you have things you want to talk about, resources you'd like assistance in creating. We really appreciate what you're doing for your organization during this time of uncertainty, and we really wish you the best of luck. Have a great day, everyone.